Why would you have a boring 9-to-5 job when you can do permaculture design and agroforestry to save the planet as a career? I had no idea about these things because I went to school for ecology and environmental science and still had heard nothing about them until about 5 years ago when I started just deep diving down the YouTube rabbit hole. You can do this work anywhere. Here's the process, the actual blueprints, the practical technical how-tos. This is how we create the future that we all want to see. This is how we do it. We grow food, we restore the ecosystems, and we re-engage with our local ecology. This is how we change the world and create a future worth living in.
Not that far from the beach. It's an old farm, and you can kind of see that. And over the last 2 years, starting to reforest, plant, build infrastructure here.
And these nets. So these little retreat huts are really cool. They're all named after different influential people in the permaculture space. All of these people have just done some incredible foundational work in creating a future that's going to be great for us all. We finally made it to Costa Rica. We're in the dry tropics, exploring the most cutting-edge Syntropic agroforestry, the most cutting-edge food forests of Costa Rica. We're here for a deep dive into learning all about agroforestry in these kind of climates and advanced Syntropic agroforestry with Scott Gallant, Sam from Porvenir Design at Tierra Amor, which is where we're at. And they have really incredible agroforestry systems here, lots to learn, just an absolutely epic place to begin our American agroforestry adventure. The winds are crazy, it's hot. It was like 40-degree days, it's dry. The agroforestry systems are suffering because it's the very end of the dry season, and so it's very drastic change, just like for us with the frost. It's like that here, but the dry season. Everything suffers for 4 or 5 months with no rain, and then as soon as the rains come, everything bursts to life. So it's really cool to see the systems here, the different dynamics of water capturing, accumulation systems, agroforestry systems designed and planted by other Syntropic experts around the world. It's an absolute privilege to be here, and it's such a learning experience. I've already gained so much value out of these last just couple days of being here in Costa Rica. Incredible adventures planned, but I'm just soaking in this moment with the monkeys. We got Scott and Javi here. Scott's been designing this place for the last 2+ years. Javi's the farm manager, he's doing all the work.
My name is Javi. I'm the farm manager here at Tierra Amor, and my role here is to participate in the design of the systems and then coordinate all of the management. I have my mentor Scott right here.
I'm Scott, Porvenir Design. Our roles in the whole project, trying to be pretty big picture, like mantener, like maintain the, like what is this long-term experimental vision of this place, and apply that layer, and then really be in like pretty constant dialogue, brainstorming about what's working, what's not, where do you need support, and I think offering a lot of just like second opinions and confirming ideas, and sometimes being like, that could be done better. Never with Javi, that's with the other people.
Awesome day, awesome evening. Been really working on the Food Forest Pioneers program that's coming soon for phase 2. Life has been really good and busy. Just loving being in Costa Rica. Just made it into this beautiful library. Scott's brought a bunch of really cool books.
Holistic Management Handbook, Resilient Bamboo Forestry, Permaculture Guide to Reed Beds, Permaculture Earthworks. We got some classics. Fukuoka, J. Russell Smith, Mark Shepard, my Bible, Mr. Holmgren from your neck of the woods. I had 2 boxes and I used to travel with 4. It's ridiculous. I can't stop buying books. How's your crew doing? Jet lagged?
No, we've been doing workouts in the evenings and
Nice.
jet lag's gone.
Good, man. Yeah, I'm usually at least once a day, pretty hardcore workout, so.
Yeah.
But you're not sure if you already saw it?
Yeah, your eyes are just fucking with you.
Yeah.
There's the warning sign, like your eyes are like, please stop looking at the sun. You know the sun is always setting somewhere. And as soon as it hit the horizon, as soon as it went below, it just like the sky just started like pulsing this like grapefruit pink color. It was nuts. Everybody arrived for the course yesterday, getting started today. Had a chance to walk around and get familiar with the site. Had some conversations with Scott, which was fantastic. Great to see him in person and get the opportunity to learn from him.
Him and his team started seeing the same street pop up all over the United States. Like that street that has Taco Bell and Payless Shoes, you know, Wells Fargo Bank, Houston, or if you're in Cincinnati, or if you're somewhere in Maine, it looks identical. They kept finding these same patterns. Why are all of these places looking the same?
That was like a really eroded place, this one. So all the water should go by this. And now we have like a really good management of the water.
The original road was right down the center, extremely eroded. Where Anthony's tree nurseries are, that was probably like 5 to 10 meter deep gully. This is the first attempt at a syntropic plot here in the dry tropical forest. The purpose of this system exists to trial syntropic farming here in the dry tropics. This hasn't been done in this climate yet. We're in a really degraded site. This was an old road right through here in the low point. It was highly eroded. Chemicals were applied. There was nothing about this that was like vibrant gold. It was like, all right, how long does it take to bring this back to life to get food? We really debated, do we put more food in, like trees in here? We decided to do that. In hindsight, it was a mistake. We really should have just focused on some of those easy to grow placenta crops and then pure biomass species. This hasn't received really any rain now for 4 months. We get these big winds through here. They desiccate everything. You can see how the bananas are just torn up. So that's been really the curve. Like, all right, we know what does not need water here. That's like our big benefit. So we can transport this. This is a massive project. We don't know how many hectares will be in agroforestry in the future, but 5, 10, 20 are reasonable numbers. So this is like experiment 1. Let's learn everything. Let's fail, make a ton of mistakes, and then expand that out. Like if something can germinate here and survive in this setting, it might be an indicator that's a useful plant for us. Pioneer species are our best allies. Like things that can thrive in these harsh conditions. It does not need irrigation. It does not need compost. There's a dozen, there's probably 20, 30, 40 other species in that palette of plants that are going to fulfill that function.
So in these systems behind me, they've got wood laid down as the access paths, but the wood came from old structures, old buildings that were here when this was just a big farm. And so they're repurposing a lot of the wood for the systems, like in these pathways, but they're also reusing a lot of the wood in the buildings. Very cool. So last night we had a Food Forest Pioneers call preparing for Phase 2, the Food Forest Fellowship. Very exciting, you'll know all about it. Because of the time zone differences, it was 1 a.m. when we started our call for those folks in New Zealand and Australia. 1 a.m. here, we ended the call around 3:30. It's currently 6:30 and we're going surfing.
So you want to do it here where you're going to put your back foot, a lot of wax, and also when you're going to grab the board.
Where we have flatter land, how we could set up roads. We talk about key points, right?
That little notch in the valley isn't somewhere that's like great for ag. It's not really somewhere that's like really good to be living in. It's hard to get to. It's probably not where you're supposed to put roads and whatnot. It's kind of like a marginal spot in terms of human point of view, and at the same time it's probably the money spot for ecosystem point of view. Water catches there's tons of life, there's different bird species, maybe it's a little bit warmer.
So permanence, we keep going down, access, and water. We're trying to identify 3 sources of potable water. We need to know where we can get to on the property that's reasonable. Nice, that's my train set. I want to be one of those old men with a train set.
But it's all just agroforestry.
Yeah. So where do we put our main house?
If you extrapolate that a little bit and think of like communities in general, this doesn't have to be for a singular homestead. These same principles can be expanded. For instance, like if you have this big space, where might you put community level infrastructure? So instead of just one house, do you cluster multiples there? Instead of just like a personal garden, is this the best space for a larger garden space? Where does water sourcing for a larger amount of people go? Because as we look at the principles, what we'll notice is like a zone 1 that we're considering for ourselves or for our homestead, you could also have like a zone 1 on a community level. It's like, yeah, there's a cluster of like 25 houses there. And then outside of that, we have a zone 2 where it's like, this is this next space where they spend a little bit less time, but all of this can be extrapolated to like communal and ideally regional or even national levels.
All right, we made it to the end of the first week. It's been incredible, really taking the extra time to dive deep into patterns, reading the landscape, water. Absolute expert practitioners, man. These guys are the best permaculture designers in Central America. They have the most established permaculture design business. They've been operating the longest, and their work is just excellent. And so it's such a pleasure to spend time with Scott and Sam. Massively valuable being here, learning from these guys. See what today brings. I think we're doing ecology, biology, and soil today. Excellent exercise this morning of preparing a new agroforestry system to get planted. Really great to walk through step by step with Scott and see what their installation process looks like. Prepping beds, where you actually move soils, just all the technical details of preparing these spaces for agroforestry. This is the cutting edge of agroforestry happening right here, which is the Food Forest Fellowship. This is an online platform where you're going to learn cutting edge from guest experts, myself, the other pioneers, and all the places we're going, all the cool agroforestry sites we're going to see. This is how you level up your food forest journey. Join now, it's live, we're on, weekly calls, guest experts, all the rest of it. Cannot wait to see you in there. This is the next chapter. My best effort to make agroforestry and food forest education accessible at a fantastic price point for the value that you receive. Access to me personally, the other food forest pioneers, all the behind the scenes on these fantastic agroforestry adventures. I'd love to see you there. Part of what they're trying to do here is figure out a model or a template for doing agroforestry at a really large scale with zero inputs and no massive soil cultivation, right? Not bring heavy equipment and machinery out into the landscape so you can still reforest it. Maybe something like nests rather than big cultivated blocks. We'll see.
So on a landscape level in general, if we blindfold you and dump you out of a helicopter somewhere and you land, you're going to be able to look around you and see either a rounded landscape or a jagged landscape. And there's only really 2 principal landscapes in the world. There are other minor landscapes, that we'll talk about in a moment. But the two principal landscapes that exist in the world are arid landscapes and humid landscapes. Because you can look at the ridge lines and see that they are rounded. When you look in an arid environment, we're talking about like desert. And that's where you see like very jagged, rectangular, cubic, pyramid type shapes, where it's very, very angular. So that's when you know you're in a dry landscape. Now this forest does tend to be more dry than wet. It's a dry tropical forest, but overall, we're still in a humid landscape. You look at a landscape like this, which is quite common in Guanacaste, sort of a deforested landscape. What you'll notice is that a lot of trees change their growth pattern. They adapt to what's around them, and they might not actually look and act like they would if they were in their natural setting. And so that's a really interesting thing, is that if you look at a pasture like this and you see like a tree that normally wants to be like a big, tall, overstory tree like this, oftentimes you'll see them in a pasture with like a big, huge trunk, but they start their first bifurcation like quite low. Pieces of wood and 3 screws in it. Like almost anyone can do this, almost anywhere in the world. You do not need this piece. This is a really convenient modern invention, this level here. They're really inexpensive and available here in this country. Sometimes you can't find one. And if you don't have one, you can find level, and probably they did this the first time. I noticed the screws out a little bit. If you hang a string with a weight on it from this level, compaction is something that really damages soils. Compaction is something that really forces water to minimize its ability. It makes it move faster, basically. Minimize the ability for water to be absorbed. So the idea of non-compaction is really critical here because it allows water to infiltrate into the soil better. The soil in and of itself is basically the best sponge that we can think of.
Like 180. Hey, Kyle, you have trouble with it?
So then we'll have clay. Sometimes if the soil has a lot of organic material, like little pieces of grass and roots, that'll end up on top as well, the organic material.
Turned out how it's not respectful, but something.
For managing water, building soil, growing food, it's going to hit all of the principles.
Right now we're having a big problem with an iguana. Sometimes we plant like a full bed, and the other day there's nothing left because the iguana ate it. So yeah, we're trying to solve that.
I've started to just never trust the labels from the nursery. Everything says full sun. Why? Because that's how it's done conventionally. In an orchard, everything's done in full sun to make it really, really simple and to maximize the amount of fruit that comes off those trees. Because yeah, in full sun, trees will generally be more productive. Does that mean that they're healthier? Does that mean that they have higher nutrient density? Does that mean that they have better resilience against pest, drought, disease, fungus? Because you can maximize fruit by throwing it in full sun. Maybe it'll be a sick, unhealthy tree, but hey, the fruits are pumping. Versus in an agroforestry system, you don't have to apply fertilizers. It's less affected by the drought. The fruit quality is better. It produces a bit less. You also have other things above it and below it. That's why I'm so passionate about this stuff. It feels like the most meaningful work that I could possibly do with my life. Reforesting the landscape, reconnecting with what it means to be a human as part of the ecosystem, growing food for the community, for your family, for the wildlife, helping the earth regenerate. It'll do it on its own. If we just leave a piece of land alone for 100 years, it will regenerate. But doing agroforestry, we can expedite that and do it 10 times faster while producing food for the community. Materials, resources, wood, fibers, medicines, fodder for animals. You can create agroforestry systems specifically for animal integration, reforesting large slopes and big patches of land that don't necessarily need to be food forest, but just regenerative agroforestry. This work is so important and it's so compelling and it's sexy because you call it a food forest, but really it's so much deeper than that. That's why I'm so compelled by this work. That's why I'm so drawn to it. It's so meaningful to me. And especially with this work with the Food Forest Pioneers and the fellowship that we've just started, it wasn't a big master plan. It's just how things have unfolded as a result of just pursuing relentlessly that thing that universe is telling me this is what I'm meant to be doing. Life is really rewarding when you follow that intuition. Wrapping up the 2-week PDC, packing all of our onto the next adventure.